Hello YouTube. In this video, we are going to be talking about Bond of Life and what exactly it does and how it performs with Arlecchino's kit. First of all, starting off with, what is exactly Bond of Life? Bond of Life is a mechanic introduced in Fontaine, but with the release of Arlecchino, its importance is more seen, and here's everything you need to know about Bond of Life. In Razor language, you can consider Bond of Life to be a healing sponge, like we have a damage sponge called Shield in-game. Bond of Life is a healing sponge because it absorbs healing just like a shield absorbs damage. So in order to heal your character, first you have to heal the Bond of Life, and then only your character can receive any form of healing. So this is very important, and I would ask everyone to remember this because when we talk about Arlecchino's kit in just about a minute, we are going to come back to this topic and why it is very essential for Arlecchino. So moving on. How do you exactly know if you have Bond of Life? Now, Bond of Life is generally represented by this red highlight section on top of your HP bar, which represents that you have Bond of Life on your character. There's an icon of this red plus symbol, which also shows you that you have Bond of Life available on your character. Now, for every percent of HP bar that Bond of Life covers, it is actually 2% of Bond of Life, so it has a 1:2 ratio, which kind of means that the maximum amount of Bond of Life you can have on your character is 200% of your max HP. Remember that Bond of Life is a percentage unit, so it cannot be altered if you increase or decrease your HP by switching out artifacts or using Yalan C4. Now, let's talk about Arlecchino and her kit and the importance of Bond of Life in her kit. Arlecchino is a character that uses Bond of Life to increase the damage of her normal attacks. Now, the more Bond of Life you have, the more damage you do. Keeping this in mind, if you think about it, the ability of Arlecchino not being able to heal herself is kind of essential, don't you think? Because if she heals herself, she loses Bond of Life, and thus she will do less damage. So to maintain her high damage output, she kinda have to make sure that she doesn't heal herself in battle, which is exactly why she has a passive where she's unable to heal herself. So it's kind of a necessary evil if you ask me. Now, let's talk about Arlecchino's skill, All is Ash, her source of application of Blood Debt Directive, which enables her to gain Bond of Life from enemies. Now, before we go any further into her skill, I want you guys to remember 5 numbers: 65, 130, 145, and their distant cousins 25 and 30. I will talk about these numbers in just a sec, so you don't have to worry about it. First, we have a 65%. This is the amount of Bond of Life you gain on Arlecchino from a single target at Blood Debt Directive level 1. Next, we have is 130%. Now, 130% is actually a little tricky because this is also the amount of Bond of Life you gain from 2 targets at level 1 Blood Debt Directive. Also, it's the amount of percentage of Bond of Life you can gain from 1 target at level 2 Blood Debt Directive. Another thing I forgot to mention is that if you have Blood Debt Directive even at level 1 on a single target and the enemy actually dies, you will still gain 130% Bond of Life even if the 5 seconds are not over yet. Finally, we have 145%. Now, 145% is the maximum amount of Bond of Life you can have on Arlecchino per skill cast. It doesn't matter if you're fighting 10 enemies, which can technically give you 650% Bond of Life, but no, your Bond of Life maximum gain per skill usage caps at 145%. So now, this is the perfect segue to introduce Crimson Moon's Semblance, Arlecchino's best-in-class weapon, providing you 25% Bond of Life every single time you do a charge attack, which is on a cooldown of 14 seconds. Now, a key thing to remember is that this Bond of Life adds on top of 145% Bond of Life. So if you have Arlecchino at C0 and her signature weapon, per skill cast and charge attack, you can gain at max 170% Bond of Life. And at last, introducing the final cousin to the family, 30%. It's the minimum amount of Bond of Life you require on Arlecchino to maintain Pyro Infusion. Moving on, here is the tabular representation of Arlecchino defeating enemies and collecting Bond of Life for Blood Debt Directive level 1, Blood Debt Directive level 2, and different sorts of enemy composition. By the way, this table is only for C0, and for my C2 connoisseurs, here is another table if you guys want to take a look at it. I hope this helps. Now, the difference between C0 and C2 is that you don't have to wait for 5 seconds for the Blood Debt Directive to become Blood Debt due. and thus it completely eliminates that one row of level 1 blood debt directive. Now finally, let's talk about Arlecchino's burst. Arlecchino's burst is her only source of healing during battle. Arlecchino's burst heals her for 150% of bond of life and 150% of her attack. Now this is quite interesting is because the first 100% of the bond of life is used to clear out the bond of life during healing, and she only heals for about 50% of the bond of life she has and 150% of her attack stat. Here is my Arlecchino with 20,000 HP, 2000 attack, and 130% bond of life at 150 HP trying to heal herself. And this is the amount of healing she receives whenever I press Q. Another thing we have to keep in mind is that Arlecchino, whenever she heals herself, she actually snapshots all the attack buffs she have. Let's say for example, if you have 4000 attack on your Arlecchino while she presses Q, she will technically heal more, if that makes sense. So that's everything you need to know about Arlecchino and her bond of life. If this video was helpful to you, please consider liking the video and subscribing. It really helps me out a lot and means a lot to me. Thank you so much for watching once again, and please take care of yourself, of your loved ones, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.